Okay folks, it's time to talk poo. Now, we live in a caravan. There's no main services. Well, we've got mains electric, but we have a private water supply, we have bottled gas, and clearly we're not on a sewer. And this was one of the problems that we had to overcome when we got here. So we started researching the possibilities and the options, and we went down the road of the compost toilet. And everything that we looked at, there were lots of videos online about compost toilets, and so we adopted what we thought was the best version that we saw, and we, as we always try to do, we consulted what we consider, or who we consider to be the expert, the main guy. And when it comes to compost toilets, the main guy is a guy called Joe Jenkins, who wrote the book on it. It's an amazing book full of fact, scientific evaluation, and myth busting. It's a very detailed book, and it explains that the fact that just because we use a toilet and then we flush it afterwards, we think we've got rid of the problem, because it's not with us anymore. It's gone down a pipe and it's headed off somewhere, but it's still a problem. It's a massive problem, and environmentally it's a huge problem around the world. And so, as far as we're concerned, compost toilets are the way. They are the way forward. But none of the videos that we saw, I'm sure there's some out there, but none of the ones we saw really kind of got down to the nitty gritty, really. They talked about it, they didn't show it. And so I thought I would do a video of our experience of spending what is now, we got here in July, we set up our toilets in August, and it's now March. So August, so it's what, 7 or 8 months. So we've been living with a compost toilet for 8 months, and we want to show you the reality of what that means. Because everybody we've spoken to about it, people who've come here, they've all been a bit, oh, I'm not sure about that. But everybody's experienced using it has kind of gone afterwards, they've gone, oh, that was really all right. And so I want to show you a little more of the realities of living with a compost toilet. So what we did was we bought 20 large containers, which are these, with really good lids, and I took apart the toilet that was here in the caravan, and I just retained the seat, and I built a bench, and the bench fits one of these containers directly underneath a hinged board, and the toilet seat is attached to the top of that hinged board. So you just sit on the toilet as you would normally. Lift the lid up, do whatever you need to do, close the lid. The difference is, next to that we have another container which is full of wood shavings. Now the wood shavings, we're fortunate here that there's a forest nearby. It's about an hour away, a place called Glenfinnan Community Forest, and it's a community owned forest. They cut the trees, they process the trees, and they have a mill and a workshop, and they produce bags and bags and bags and bags of wood shavings, and they're happy to get rid of them. They want you to take them away. And that's the case with many joiner shops and timber outlets. So they're not that difficult to get hold of. You need somewhere to store them, of course. So we're fortunate that we've got a bit of space in our barn, and that's where we put them. So we have a bucket or a container of shavings in the toilet next to the bucket. So when we go to the toilet, once we've been, we get a handful of wood shavings and drop it in the container, and whatever is in there gets covered up. You have to cover it up, and as soon as you cover it up, there is no smell. There's a smell for a few minutes, just the same as there is in an ordinary toilet. But after a few minutes, you go back in there, there is no smell. So one bucket of this size, one container this size, for 2 of us living here, maybe we'll fill that in 5 days. And of course, by the time you've emptied one container with wood chips into the next one, that container is now empty. So then we do a very simple changeover. Lift the lid. Put the lid on that bucket and take it out. This is the bucket that we were covering the material with. So that goes in. That goes back down. Bring in a new bucket of material. That's all there is to it. So then obviously we accumulate buckets, and we have accumulated 9. I normally do it when there's 4 or 5, but we've accumulated 9. And then once you've got them, once you've got a few, it makes it worthwhile doing, we empty them into this compost bin. Now we've built 3 bays, so what happens is we fill this bay, and we'll fill this for a year. Once that's full up, we'll seal it off. By that we mean we cover it in straw or hay or whatever material we have, and we'll start filling the end bay. And then this will remain sealed, not hermetically sealed, just sealed by the cover material for a year. So by the time that's uncovered, which will mean that the other bin has been getting filled for a year, this will be perfectly usable compost. So this is the point I want to get to. I want to show you that there is no horror story here. There really isn't. I'm standing, this is it. This is 8 months worth of our poo and wee from that caravan. 8 months. I'm standing right next to it, and I tell you without a word of a lie, there is no smell. Because we put the buckets in, we wash the buckets, the dregs from the buckets get put in here as well. We then cover it over with straw or hay or rashes or whatever it is we happen to have got laying around, generally a bit of hay, and that's it. And there's no smell, and it breaks down. So I'm gonna do something that you may consider, well, what is he doing? I'm going to show you what it looks like in there. I've got the other camera, and this is, that's it. It's just broken down wood chips. We throw little bits of food scraps and waste in here as well. You can see there's an eggshell in there. But we tend to put most of that on the other compost, on the regular composts. But this is what 8 months of wood chips and human waste looks like. And the most amazing part of it is that it's not waste. This is compost. And anybody that's even thinking about going down the route of using a compost toilet, I would strongly urge you to get a copy of Joe Jenkins' book. It's called Humanure, and it is most eye-opening. And so I'm going to empty the 9 buckets that we've got here today. I'm going to wash them, I'm going to put them in there, and I'm going to recover it and show you the whole process. I'll edit it so that you're not going to watch me do the whole lot, but I just wanted to make the point really that the reality of living with a compost toilet is, as long as you do it properly, and all you have to do it properly is make sure you cover things. So in the container in the toilet in the caravan, you cover with wood chips. Out here you cover with straw or hay. As long as you do those 2 things, you don't get a smell. And if you do smell anything, it's because you haven't put enough cover material on it. There's no flies, there's nothing. There's no problem. It's an amazing system. So much so that when we build our house, we're going to go down that road. I really don't want to dig a septic tank and have waste, because that's what it becomes. When a toilet is flushed and it goes into a septic tank or it goes down a main sewer, it is waste. This isn't. This is a usable product. And so everyone's a winner, especially the environment. There's a very well sealed, very well fitted lids on these containers. There's a container. In it goes. And we'll repeat that 9 times in this instance. The hardest part of this job is getting the lids off. Obviously what I've done before I started filming was I dug everything from the centre out to the edges to create a hole to tip everything into. That's what you're seeing, like wood chips and a bit of paper, that's it. There is a little bit of a smell at this stage, simply because everything's not covered up, but it's a urine smell, nothing more. And this whole process will take me, I don't know, it's just water that's rainwater that's collected on top. This whole process will take me, I don't know, 20 minutes maybe, and 9 buckets will be from, if you said 5 days a bucket, it's 45, so 6 weeks. 20 minutes every 6 weeks. We spend a whole lot less time doing this than we ever spent cleaning the bathroom back at home when we had a mains connected bathroom, because apart from hoovering up a few wood shavings that have fallen out your hand as you've been putting it into the receptacle, there's no other mess. That's it. Two to go. Now these wood chips will mainly be spruce and larch trees. That's the trees that they cut over at the forest. And you'll notice that, I'll show you again, I mean, you know, if you don't like it and you think it's disgusting, then just don't look. I'm just going to show you a view of what it looks like now with the, if you like, the raw buckets. There we go. I think you can see that the red wood shavings, that's the larch, and the slightly paler browner ones is the spruce. And they've just soaked up the moisture that's in the container, and they've sort of deepened in colour, so that's why that's red. That's it. And then in the buckets it's just a residue of wood chippings, which we're just going to clean out with some fairy liquid, some water, and a toilet brush, which we keep here. So there's buckets laying around, and we do get a bit of rain around here, so there's always water available. So all I'll do is put a squirt of liquid in each one. Bought this bottle of liquid in August. Used it every time. Still plenty in there. Again, we use it's a biodegradable washing up liquid, so we're covering all our bases. You know, we don't want to harm anything. So now just I just swirl it all around and tip it into the next bucket. And all I'm seeing here is wood shavings. Now I'll tip that in there. Now I'll do the whole thing again, except I need to go into some water. Stupidly used it all up. Bear with. That was just a bit of a rinse. Now I'll do the whole thing again, except this time I'll run round with the toilet brush. And all I'm seeing in there is wood chips. So that one's done, and we'll give them all one final rinse in a moment. Once I've done this. You see that when I made the toilet inside, that the bucket sits directly under the toilet seat, so you never get anything on the sides of the container. Just wood chips that are damp and have stuck to the side. That's it. So really, what the point I wanted to make in this video is that it's not, if you're thinking about building an off-grid hut or living off-grid or having a cabin somewhere or living in a caravan and you've got no mains, or even at home, you know, if you wanted an outside toilet down the garden, you know, if you've got a big garden and you don't want to go back to the house, you know, this is a perfectly viable, and I think better way of dealing with human byproducts, shall we say, because I don't like to call it human waste anymore, because it's not wasted. Let's think of the infrastructure that's required to deal with a toilet that's on the main sewage system, and the infrastructure that's required to run this system. You know, somewhere to compost it, some containers to put everything in, and we bought good buckets here. We bought they were a couple of £1 each, and we bought 20. I don't think we didn't need to buy. No, they were more. They were a bit more than that. They were a little more than that, I think. I bought 40. Yeah, they might have been £4 something each. So, you know, they weren't cheap as chips, but compared to the other option, which would be buying a septic tank, digging pipes in the ground, having it emptied once or twice a year of this horrible stinking wet sludge, which is all that accumulates in those kind of systems. Compared to that, this is the way to go. So in the same way as gardeners will know, when you're doing a compost, you have to have a blend of carbon rich and nitrogen rich ingredients. And if you get that balance right, nature takes over. And that's why compost heaps get hot, is because of the balance between nitrogen and carbon. And the microbes come in. First of all, you get these heat-loving microbes that just reproduce and eat everything that's in there, break it down into waste. And it gets really hot. They're called thermophilic bacteria. I think I've got that right. And then once they've done their job, they start to die away, and then the other bacteria move in, and then the worms move in, and it all slows down. And so this heap in the next few days will probably get up to maybe as much as 60 degrees centigrade, and that kills all the pathogens, all the nastiness. It can even get rid of heavy metals. It's all in Joe Jenkins' book, so you really should go and read it. So all we've got left to do is rinse the buckets with water for the final time. And then I'll use this water to rinse the lids. And all you end up with on the lids is a few damp wood chippings. That's it. All that's left to do now is to bring the edges back in on top. And put the cover material on, which in this case is hay. And it's actually hay that I raked up from the field out the front last summer after the guys had been in to cut the silage. And the baling machine came in and missed a few patches here and there. So I went out and raked it up and dragged it back to the workshop, and we dried it all out, and we made about 15 little bales with a little baling machine we made. I'll show you again, look. And there's the finished product. and that's 6 weeks worth of poo and wee in there. And I'm standing, well, you can see I'm standing right next to it. There isn't the faintest smell whatsoever. That is the reality of living with compost toilet. And so here's the thing to think about, which when you suddenly realise it, it's just so nonsensical that the water that you flush down the toilet goes off through the sewage system and ends up in a treatment plant, then has to go through all sorts of processes which must cost multi-billions of pounds around the world to make it drinkable. We then pump that drinking water back into our houses, and we drink some of it. What do we do with the rest of it? We put it in our toilets and flush this stuff away with it. And think, every time you go to the toilet, every time you flush the toilet, that's 9 litres of water, drinking water, gone. That's got to go through that whole process again. Think of the chemicals, think of the machinery that's involved in that process. And I've just done 6 weeks with maybe a bucket and a half of rainwater. That's it, nothing more. And 6 weeks is, so that's every month and a half, say that. So that's 9 times a year. So we're talking about 12 buckets of water, maybe, a year. And a little patch in the garden like that. So it's the way forward.